Hi, this is Dina for Splitcoaststampers. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to turn some common kitchen items into these faux tin tiles that are great embellishments for cards and altered projects. I'm starting with a piece of chipboard that's cut from a cereal box, and I've cut this one to a width of 6 inches because I know that I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine. I'm spreading an even layer of gel medium over the panel with a palette knife. You can use any adhesive medium, and if you don't have a palette knife, you can use the edge of a gift card or an old credit card. That works just as well. Once that's covered pretty well, we're going to spread aluminum foil over the panel and smooth it out, and you can use a brayer to roll out the wrinkles and bubbles if you want. The next step is to cut the covered chipboard into shapes that can be tiled, but be sure to let the adhesive dry completely before you go on to this step. Otherwise, the pressure of the rollers in your die cutting machine will squish the adhesive out onto your cutting plates and make a huge mess. You know that I'm speaking from experience on that one. For the next step, you'll emboss the chipboard. So you'll need an embossing folder that has a repeating pattern or a pattern that's centered on the folder, and then you'll center your chipboard onto the pattern before you run it through the machine again. Go ahead and follow your machine's instructions for using embossing folders. And just note that you may need to adjust slightly for the thickness of the chipboard when you run it through. You will need a foam brush and some acrylic paint for the next step. We're just going to cover the tile with paint, making sure to get into all the grooves of the design. You can use any color paint that you want, but most of the vintage tin tiles shown online are white, cream, or black, or a light pastel color. You can do a Google search for ideas. When you're done painting, set the tile aside to dry completely. Vintage tin tiles have a distressed look where the paint has worn away, so for that effect you'll need some kind of a solvent. I'm using odorless mineral spirits, but you could use rubbing alcohol or you could use an alcohol blending solution. Soak a little bit into a rag and rub it over the raised areas of your tiles to remove some of the paint until you have the effect that you want. If you don't have any kind of solvent, you could probably get the same effect with some fine grit sandpaper and just sand over the raised areas of the panel. You would just need to be careful not to sand through the foil. This step is optional, but I'll include it in case this is a product you may have or want to use. I'm just adding a metallic finish around the edges and over some of the raised areas of the panel just to add interest. This is Inca Gold, and I think this color is called Brown Gold. So this step is just a nice touch if you're using smaller panels and you're going to tile them together, or just to add a little more interest and depth to the panel. Here's the panel on a finished card. It has a sewing theme, but I thought the vintage panel was a good fit with the other elements. I wanted to share one more project that I made using smaller faux tin tiles. The process is the same, but you can see with a smaller size that you can emboss several pieces at a time, which is nice if you need a whole bunch for your project. For the smaller tiles, it's best to use an embossing folder with a small repeating pattern so that you can easily center the pieces onto the pattern before you emboss. So I painted these tiles and distressed them just like I had done in the other sample. And then I glued them onto this wooden frame that I had picked up at a local thrift store. I'm always looking for things that I can alter there, so this was a perfect find for this project. You can see there that I painted the base to match the tiles, and then after I had them all glued on, I flipped the frame over on my desk and laid a heavy book on top of it to keep it flat until the glue dried. Sometimes chipboard will tend to curl with liquid glue, so this is a good step to do too if you're gluing them onto something flat. As a final step, I used a little more odorless mineral spirits and distressed the outside and inside edges of the frame just to give some continuity to the surface. This was a really fun way to upcycle an otherwise plain piece of wood, and there's so many other things that can be done with these faux tiles. I can't wait to see how you use this technique, and I do hope you'll share. Thank you so much for watching.